How is everybody doing? Welcome back to another episode of The Banker Next Door. I am your host, Dr. Joe Berquist. So today I wanted to talk to everybody about OpenAI. They kind of caught my attention more recently, not so much because of the AI stuff, but because of what they're planned to do. They want to turn from a nonprofit into a for-profit company. And I basically started looking at this, and my initial thought was, well, wait a minute, you can't go from being a nonprofit to a for-profit. And so it prompted me to kind of reach out to some of the accounting friends that I have. And so the answer was kind of like, it isn't impossible, but it's something that is very rarely done, and it is highly unusual. And what's even more complicated with OpenAI is basically, the size of the company, the fact that they want to go public, the amount of investment that's in the company, the valuation that the company has received. We're going to look at two articles from the Wall Street Journal in here in just a second. I'll bring them up. So, and I just want to point out, so my last episode I did was on data centers, and that episode got really fascinating because there was kind of this cross section there with the data centers between kind of AI, big tech, the data centers that they need to fuel all the big tech needs the data centers to fuel the AI. And we kind of got into that whole debate, which also brings us back to what's going on with OpenAI and Sam Altman. One of Sam Altman's companies is a company that basically wants to create these smaller nuclear facilities, which would inevitably help to power some of these data centers that are being built. So that's one thing that Sam Altman's doing, but he's also driving the whole AI craze, the whole AI buzz with through OpenAI. But let's delve into this here a little bit here. So this is the article here from OpenAI's complex path to becoming a for-profit company. So converting from a nonprofit happens rarely, especially for organizations this wealthy. As I just pointed out, it's a big part of it is the size of the company. OpenAI has 2 years to do so. So OpenAI's plan to convert to a for-profit company is meant to simplify the world's leading artificial intelligence startup. Making that happen will be enormously complex. So the ChatGPT maker is in the midst of raising $6.5 billion from backers, including Microsoft and NVIDIA, along with venture capital firms and a United Arab Emirates state-backed company. An essential provision of talks is that OpenAI, currently governed by a charitable nonprofit, must within 2 years become a public benefit corporation. That means its mission is to earn a profit while creating social good. Yeah, I had to try to say that with a straight face. No, their mission is they want to make a crap ton of money. that's their mission. Yeah, Sam Altman. Here's a secret: Sam Altman doesn't care about the social good. I'll say that. Yeah, when he's driving around town in his Lambo, he doesn't care about the social good. If it doesn't, investors could take back their money. To get there, it will have to deal with regulatory requirements in at least 2 states, determine how to award equity in the for-profit company, and split assets with the nonprofit entity, which will continue to exist. This kind of transaction is incredibly complex and would involve a large number of legal and regulatory hurdles that would need to be navigated, said Karen Blackistone, general counsel of the investment firm Hanger Management and an attorney specializing in technology and tax-exempt organizations. An OpenAI spokeswoman declined to comment. So how is OpenAI currently set up? So OpenAI was founded in 2015 as a nonprofit with the goal of safely developing artificial intelligence. It created a for-profit subsidiary 4 years later to help it raise more money. So here is the interesting thing. There's a lot more backstory to this. Elon Musk was involved in this as well as what's his name? Eric. I can't think of his last name. The guy from Google, one of the founders of Google. But Eric, one of the founders of Google, was involved in this with Elon. And Sam Altman was a guy that I think had a lot of promise, who they liked, who got involved in this early on. But they had a lot of conversation around like, okay, well, how are we going to develop AI, and how are we going to develop it in a responsible way that makes AI, something that is for the overall social good. And they basically said, okay, we're going to create this as a nonprofit, and we're going to make it open source. We're not going to sell it. We're not going, we're not going, we're going to make it, we're going to develop it, build it together, and then put it out there for people. Then basically they didn't like that. Sam Altman didn't like that. Eric from Google didn't like that. And basically they gave Elon the boot, and basically, or depending on who tells the story, Elon basically says, well, no, I don't want to develop that. This was not to be a for-profit enterprise. This was to be a nonprofit open source for everybody to use. And so Elon leaves, and now they decide to create. So 4 years later, 2019, Elon leaves, and they now decide that they want to create the for-profit subsidiary, which would then have the ChatGPT, which would then be sold to companies and used to make money. So that's just a little bit of the backstory of what's going on here. So, okay, so the nonprofit's board of directors currently controls the subsidiary and has the right to act against shareholder interests for reasons that furthers its humanitarian mission. In tax filings, OpenAI notes that each of its various arms is legally bound to pursue the nonprofit's mission, such as following uncompromised principles of safety and broad benefit in its research and deployment efforts, unencumbered by profit incentives. OpenAI has said it would continue to operate a nonprofit that would do charitable work and own a stake in the for-profit company. Yeah, lots of companies have that. It's called a foundation. Lots of big companies open, okay, we're going to open a foundation as a nonprofit wing to the company so that they can throw money around, make it look like they're doing good, and get some tax breaks. Yeah. Why is it making this change? Because they want to get stupid rich. Oh, wait. Oh, no, I'm sorry. Hold on. After the surprise ouster of chief executive Sam Altman as CEO last fall, which lasted just a few days, investors began pushing OpenAI to turn into a more typical company. Investors, meaning Microsoft, they feared that the esoteric structure made it more likely that such a disruption could happen again. So, in other words, you're beginning to see a picture unfold here of why Sam Altman got booted as CEO. On the one hand, he undoubtedly wanted to turn it into a for-profit enterprise, which probably a lot of people on the board said, no, we don't want to do that. That's not what this was set up, or that's not what this was initially designed to do. And then the other thing was how the AI was being developed. I believe that, Sam Altman is just hell-bent of creating this AI, not only creating the AI, but creating the singularity, creating the AI God. And he wants to be first mover advantage. He wants to get there first. But he doesn't care about the safety. He doesn't care about the safety rails. He doesn't care about the consequences of what that could bring upon us. He just wants to be there first because he wants to be uber rich. I think that's all you really need to understand there. And it's kind of laughable that they feared that the esoteric structure made it more likely that such a disruption could happen again. Yeah, well, when you completely go against the original mission, and it is a nonprofit entity that's supposed to be doing humanitarian work, and now you just want to become, Scrooge McDuck. Like, yeah, people tend to have an issue with that. Okay, operating as a for-profit company that isn't governed by a nonprofit will make it similar and easier for investors to share in OpenAI's success. Oh, isn't that wonderful? Isn't that wonderful? Microsoft. Oh, did I mention Microsoft? Microsoft has put $13 billion into OpenAI's for-profit division and is the company's largest outside stakeholder. Oh, you're kidding. You're kidding. Other firms have bought stakes from employees in private transactions. Current investors don't technically own equity in OpenAI because it's a non-for-profit. Instead, they own a share of any future profits of the company, which currently loses billions of dollars a year. More straightforward equity would require a cap on investors' profits, which the nonprofit currently imposes. OpenAI would have to figure out how to translate the profit stakes of Microsoft and other existing investors into equity in the restructured company. Regulators have already scrutinized Microsoft's relationship with OpenAI. Yes, absolutely. And whether it effectively controls the startup. Yes, if they put $13 billion in there, you could bet your bottom line that, yeah, they control what's going on there. Sam Altman gets fired, and guess what? 3 days later, he's back because he's Microsoft's guy, and Microsoft put him in there, and Microsoft was like, yeah, you're not, Microsoft basically straight up told the board, like, no, you're not kicking our guy out. He's going back in, and the board members that made trouble, yeah, they're gone. The tech giant has argued that its investment only entitles it to a share of potential profits, but a new structure under which Microsoft has an equity stake in OpenAI could invite further antitrust attention. Yeah, you think so? So what is involved in the conversion and who would have to approve it? So OpenAI is a Delaware-based corporation and would need to change its structure legally under the state's law. Given Delaware's business-friendly legal regime, really? I might want to ask Elon Musk about that Delaware business-friendly legal regime. Making that change should be the easiest part of the process. A law professor and founding faculty director of the Lau Mickett Center for Philanthropy and Nonprofits at the University of California. The more complicated part is what would happen to OpenAI's assets when such a conversion takes place. It can't simply shift assets from a nonprofit to a for-profit. The nonprofit is legally required to end up with assets, including any asset and securities, at least as valuable as those it turns over to the for-profit. In effect, OpenAI's operations would likely be sold to the for-profit company or its investors, with the charity retaining the proceeds. Assets previously donated to the public benefit cannot be repurposed to private benefit without compensating the public for the loss. It couldn't be determined how much the remaining nonprofit would receive in such a transaction. Given that OpenAI is expected to be valued at around $150 billion after the current fundraising round, the amount could be immense. That determination is particularly complicated because the nonprofit might own some of AI's patents on AI technology, which would need to be valued in the conversion. Because most of OpenAI's operations are in California, that state's attorney general would have jurisdiction to ensure its charitable assets were protected, according to legal experts. And then it says, what would the nonprofit do after the conversion? So OpenAI hasn't said what the continuing nonprofit would do once a profit-seeking company takes over all of its operations. Yeah, they'd find something for it to do. The current nonprofit has supported research on universal basic income programs and made charitable grants, and I'm sure it will continue to do things like that. One important issue OpenAI will have to resolve in the conversion is what rights the nonprofit will have to AI technology that the new company develops. Yeah, it will have no rights. They'll take all the rights away. They'll give it to the new for-profit entity. Those rights are too valuable. They have to give it to the new for-profit company. They're not going to leave it in the nonprofit. What other challenges will OpenAI have to overcome to make the switch? OpenAI's board has said it is thinking about giving Altman equity in the new company. Oh, you don't say. You don't say. The size of his stake would likely invite public scrutiny. I would think so. OpenAI will also have to determine whether the board of directors at the nonprofit will run the for-profit company, and if so, who would govern the remaining nonprofit. No, I think those board members will just remain on the existing nonprofit. They will bring in all new board members, of course, carefully selected by Microsoft and Sam Altman and some of these other major investors, and that's who the new board will be made up of. In addition, OpenAI will still have to contend with a lawsuit followed by Elon Musk. The complaint filed in August, a revised version of an earlier suit that he dropped, argues that he was fraudulently manipulated into believing OpenAI would remain a nonprofit when he co-founded it and provided seed money. OpenAI has disputed Musk's version of events and his claims. Musk split from Altman and other co-founders in 2018, partly over their desire to take in outside investors and commercialize the technology. In other words, they wanted to make money. They wanted to turn it into a full-blown for-profit enterprise. And Elon didn't want to do that because that was not the original mission or the intent of what the company was originally designed to do. In 2023, he founded a rival private company, XAI. So, but why didn't they say that at the beginning of the article? They should have said all this at the beginning of the article. And like I said, it also depends on whose, side of the story you're hearing. Sam Altman's going to tell one story. Elon's going to tell our friend Eric from Google is going to tell another. And then very quickly here, we have this article here that says OpenAI nearly doubles valuation to 157 billion in funding round. The startup behind ChatGPT raises 6.6 billion from backers, including Microsoft, SoftBank, and Thrive Capital. So they did get this 6.6 billion in new funding, capping a complex fundraising process that involved negotiations with multiple tech giants, large private investors. At the same time, it has been experiencing disruptive internal turmoil. Oh, you don't say. Investors are valuing the startup behind ChatGPT at 157 billion. A total that puts it on par with the market capitalization of publicly traded household names such as Goldman Sachs, Uber, and AT&T. OpenAI was last valued at 86 billion earlier this year when employees sold existing shares. The funding round is one of the largest ever for a private company, save for the 10 billion OpenAI itself raised from Microsoft in January of 2023. Earlier this year, Elon Musk's startup XAI raised 6 billion. Investors in the new round will have the right to withdraw their money if OpenAI doesn't complete its planned conversion to a for-profit company within 2 years. Currently, it is a charitable nonprofit, as we discussed. Let's see here. Apple was in talks to invest in OpenAI, but those discussions fell apart. It would have been a rare strategic investment for the iPhone maker, which has already joined with OpenAI on its new Apple Intelligence product. I just want to look at here. So that's pretty much it. Okay, so basically, to kind of wrap up on this, like I said, this is this is kind of like the data center issue. I mean, this is a very fascinating situation as it's unfolding. As you know, I mean, OpenAI has, they kind of blew the world away a few years ago with ChatGPT and rolling that out, and really kind of kicked off this whole AI craze and the whole AI bonanza that we've been experiencing here for the last few years. They have raised a ridiculous amount of money. And this is all highly, highly unusual for a nonprofit type entity. And I think it's something that has to be looked at very closely. I am not one to say whether or not, it can or can't do this. I mean, I think within what becomes interesting is that they certainly seem like they are able to do this, but it then creates a lot of questions as to who gets what assets, the new for-profit entity versus the existing nonprofit entity. How do they divvy up the assets? How does it get paid out? Obviously, if this is a $157 billion company. So if the new for-profit has to buy the assets from the nonprofit existing entity, OpenAI, then they're going to have to pay for it. So that, nonprofit, would get a boondoggle of huge amount of money. Where's all that money coming from? How are they funding that? And obviously, as it says in some of these articles, OpenAI is not profitable. They're losing billions and billions of dollars right now. Now, obviously, if they become a for-profit, they could sell this. They could, obviously, I'm sure they've looked at numbers and said, hey, we could make a lot more money as a for-profit enterprise. But I just find this whole thing very fascinating. I find this whole, and I think that what I don't like is I don't like Sam Altman. I don't care for Sam Altman. I think that Sam Altman is a very unscrupulous character. I think that he has been completely driven by greed. I think this is why Elon, got out of this whole situation to begin with, because I think this gentleman he is hell bent on becoming fabulously wealthy. I think he wants to be recognized as like a tech genius. I think he wants to be up there with Elon and Steve Jobs and all these other Zuckerberg. I think he wants to be in that air with these people, and he sees this as his avenue. This is his ticket to get there. So this guy is not motivated by the public interest. This guy is not motivated by what's the humanitarian good, if you will. He is motivated by money and getting stupid rich. That's what his motivations are here. And it's just fascinating how this whole thing is played out. I think that I think ethics, morals, obligations, duty, I think all these kind of things are going to come into question here. This whole thing is going to make for a fascinating business case study in the years ahead as this whole thing unfolds and how this ultimately ends up, playing out. But like I said, I wanted to get this out there because I really think that this is going to make for a fascinating topic in the months and the years to come as to how this whole thing plays out with this company. And we'll see what happens. So, but I'll wrap up with this. If you like this episode, please make sure to like, share, and subscribe, as that always helps the channel. Please remember we are on YouTube, Rumble, and all major podcast platforms. Please leave your comments down below, as I love to get back to people and see what people's thoughts are on this. Check out some of the other content on the channel, and I will be back to everybody again real soon. Thanks a lot.